Afternoon. It's Thursday, July 21st, and this is a request session. We do these once a month, and we have, for dog days of summer afternoon session, we had close to, with outside questions, close to 200 people tuned to this session. I'm not surprised to see that there are only 47 here in the room right now. But as you know, your questions will drive the discussion. So this whole thing will be based on what you want to see, stocks to be analyzed that don't get much technical coverage. And of course, I'm not merely going to cover them. I'm going to tell you where they're going and how you can trade them. All right, so let me get to the questions and see what you guys have in store today. All right. Question from Brian. No, I'm sorry. This is from outside of the session today. Someone submitted a written request for Arvin. BRTI engages in the provision of financial products and services in insurance, asset management, banking, and property. Well, I'm not sure what that is. BRTI, let's see. I use that to track Bitcoin, but all right. So, Dave, you're going to have to do better than that because I don't know. Wait a second here. Okay, let me start with the Charles Francis, ARKK. ARKK is ARK Innovation. Don't think it needs a describer. It actually does, because I have no clue. I mean, I may have looked at this 10 times without remembering what ARK Innovation is. So if you post these requests, I'd be grateful if you would tell us a little bit about these companies. All right, so most recently, the pattern that looks useful to me is right here. And it's trying to hold the secondary pivot. Well, I guess I would actually start there. All right, so it gets even more closely to bounces from P2. And we know that we can always do trades with the expectation, or at least the possibility, of a bounce from these hidden pivot levels. And more, the hidden pivot system is trading not the entry signals, but the levels themselves that you use to create signals of using certain tactics that make risk almost disappear. All right, so we're in a bounce. It hasn't done anything of significance on the daily chart. For that to happen, we'd need a rally to surpass this external peak right there from early May. It occurred at 52.71. So that's not too far above where we are now. I would just keep an eye on it. The trend is promising for a possible bottom, but the only impulsive move we've seen is not a true impulse leg, because we're talking about internal peaks. But I would give you a current target on this stock of 51.33. So that's where I think it's going. Even if it doesn't pause there exactly, or the pattern doesn't work precisely, we have such a blow through here that this thing yesterday went through the midpoint pivot with such force that I can give you the odds of this actually getting to 51.33 are 106%. All right, so that it's more than a certainty that it's going to get there. And that's what ABCD, anybody can look at these patterns and pretend that they understand them or read them, but what gives us our idiosyncratic ability to extrapolate useful information from ABCD is price action at P, the midpoint pivot. So just keep that in mind. It tells us everything we need to know, even when you hit it in a corrective ABCD. That red line is where You only need to know how to read that red line, and you'll be off and running. Bart wants to know about Boeing. And it's had a good couple of days. Yesterday, it took out that external peak, so that the recovery in Boeing is real, even if the airlines are not recovering too much. The airlines are never going to recover. I'm not sure how many of you know it, but the Catman, my web administrator and now my business manager, flew for United Airlines for a long time. He's flying jumbo jets, and he's been retired for, oh, I don't know, five or 6 years. But United wants him back, and he's no way. I mean, he's definitely fully retired, and he has some other very ambitious projects to engage him, not just the maintenance of Rick's picks and being my business manager, but he's doing a PhD thesis on a theological topic. So he's got his work cut out for him. But you know, when the airlines start sending guys like him letters, not that he was a great pilot, but and had a great career, but he's kind of beyond range really for what United would ordinarily be trying to entice back into the company. So when they get that desperate, you know that they're going to be looking for pilots forever. They're never going to remedy the shortage, and it's going to plague our air transit system with these canceled flights and everything else for as far as the eye can see. All right, so we definitely want to watch out here at 165.45. It's true that this is not a genuine impulse leg. Oh, I'm sorry, it is, because it passed an external peak, but I'd have to get on a smaller chart to find a one-off A there. But 165.45 is where this is likely going, and I think we'll get a tradable, meaning shortable, if you trade this thing, pullback from that price. But if you're holding a long-term position, good place to do some covered writes with some maybe slightly in the money options. Sam wants to look at DNN, Denison Mines, a junior uranium explorer. Thank you for your description there, Sam. All right, so Denison. Well, this is in just a 𝗧�ซี้head and shoulders pattern, and you know I don't think much of them, except lately they seem to be working, at least some of the time. And this is such a pretty example. So if we're going to get any kind of symmetry, I don't know. It's certainly in a bullish configuration now, and by the dint of the fact, I haven't used that one in a while, because it got past this internal and that external, we're in a real impulse leg over the last couple of weeks, and any pullback therefore would be presumptively a buying opportunity. So let's say it's got a good start here on a rally that could get legs. Here's that Arvin, Britain Holdings Limited. I need a symbol for this because BRTI is not it. A request for Cameco, which is a uranium play, the world's largest publicly traded uranium company based in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Well, we should be thankful that Bill and the Clinton Foundation didn't sell that too. I guess they didn't have the deed or access to the deed. Otherwise, they probably would have sold it. Well, it was China's turn to buy. And it wouldn't have been a Clinton sale anyway. It would have been Hunter Biden selling Cameco to the Chinese. or whatever company happens to be fronting China in that particular transaction. Well, we had a mechanical buy back there when it collapsed to the green line early in June 10th, and it didn't stop the trade out. It really threatened it for, looks like a whole month here, for the better part of a month. Now it's finally levitating with the small, I wouldn't get too head up. The penetration of P would have given it a fair presumption of continuing up to the D target at 34.48. However, mechanical buy was such a bear that it just leaves you with a little bit skittish about the stock. But it's certainly buyable here with this impulse leg over the last couple of weeks. So we need to look for a pullback in a conventional signal, which we can, here's that horrible word, actualize again in the half dozen or so ways that we do those trades, more or less risklessly. Crash, hello Crash, welcome back. Glad you could join us today. ITB Home Construction. Well, I'd like to think that this was impulsive right here, but there's nothing going on there. You almost want to count a gap, a move, a rally up through that gap as impulsive. You could count it like you would an external peak, because it's definitely resistance. So let's use that, even though technically, as Richard Nixon once said, that would be wrong. It's amazing if you put Watergate up against, even on the list of scandals over the last 10 years under Obama and Biden. If you put Watergate up against, like, if you take a list of scandals that involve what FBI, NSA, State Department, whoever, and you make a list of 100, Watergate wouldn't even, if you were really being objective about what was accomplished, what was actually done, what was the motive, and all that, Watergate wouldn't even rank in the top list of 100 top scandals of the last X number of years. But of course, the press had its vendetta for Richard Nixon. That's why I became an early fan of Nixon. Anybody the press hates as much as they did Nixon can't be all bad. But I digress. All right, ITB, nice pop through P today. And I think even if this is not a perfectly kosher impulse leg, I would say it has a very good chance there of getting to the 62.73 target. Be careful when it's in this stretch between this high and that high, because there's going to be a lot of nervousness in there and it could do just about anything. But I really like the move through P. So I think it's got a very odds-on shot getting at least to 62.73. And in a way, I guess I'm sort of correlating all these little stocks that we're looking at here with targets that I put out in ES. We'll have a look at that since nobody requests it, but I just want to put it in perspective. Earl asks, would I look at micro NASDAQ futures, such as, I'm not sure. Well, if you'd said which future, I would take a look at it. And also, NASDAQ. All right. So I'm not going to look at the NASDAQ futures because I don't even know the symbol for it, but it's going to be trading the same place as the full-fledged futures contract. Well, let me see actually what the symbol is for the micro NASDAQ contract. Micro NASDAQ. Yeah, see, this symbol lookup is, it reminds me a little bit of Amazon Music, where if you type Frank Sinatra, Only the Lonely, and you type, you put instead of an N and M, only the lonely, it can't find it. And it's the same way here. This is artificial intelligence at work. If you make one mistake there. All right, so the micro is AMNQ. So let's see what that, now MNQ U22. Let's see if it requires this AMNQ U22. Let's see, MNQ U22. All right, so here is the micro E-mini NASDAQ, just as you asked for, Earl. And a lot of things are in kind of a funny way here. Well, it's in a discomfort zone between that high and that one. And if it gets too much above where it is now, I think it's going to go into this discomfort zone here. So I guess you'll have to color me bullish. Ordinarily with these fledgling patterns, we need to, I typically use now reverse patterns to get a handle on the targets, because the conventional patterns will either be small or expended, like this one, A, B, C, D, or if we go back to a much bigger pattern, it's just going to be, you know, with an A low, like way off my screen to the left, it'll be too bullish. So the reverse pattern winds up usually giving us our most modest, our most our least ambitious projection. So we've overshot the D target on that, and even if we stretch for a slightly lower A, we've gone through that target. So all things are bullish here to the extent that this thing is taken out the D target of these reverse patterns. So I'm going to go slightly more ambitious, but still using a reverse pattern. I'll go up here for this guy, if TradeStation will let me grab that low, which it won't. Hang on. Let me see if I can get this. There we go. All right, so this is the pattern that it's a natural for what's going on, even though I like the AB to connect up better with this low, and we don't have that because of all this interference right here. So visually it's not great, but the levels will be perfectly fine. The levels will deliver winning trades. This one has delivered at least one mechanical winner bought right here. Arguably, even though it didn't quite hit the red line there, another mechanical winner there. So it's given us two good trades on the daily chart, and it's given us a pretty accurate P, which means when you get precise stalls at P, these are almost precise, it means that we're going to stall precisely up at 13,403 when it gets there. All right, so as far as the presumption of 13,403, it's not like completely in the bag, because we didn't exactly puncture the midpoint resistance, the red line, the first time we touched it. It took quite a bit of work to finally get through it. And even though the third time's the charm attempt right here really blew through it with some force, we're probably going to get to 13,403, which would be 50, I'm not even going to calculate the percent. I'm trying to correlate it with my E-mini S&P prediction. All right. Matt wants to look at our favorite MSTR. Our favorite, whatever it is. Well, I can't remember. What does MicroStrategy do? Again, if you're posting these requests, just please give us a little story about them. All right. Well, here, I don't know. It's done nothing really yet. You know, you can say that it's had sort of a tentative liftoff. So again, I'll use a reverse pattern. There was a time when I didn't trust reverse patterns enough to do anything with them, but why not? They seem to work. It was a subscriber named Monica who no longer subscribes, who first sort of put me onto how well these reverse patterns are working. And although I have Monica to thank eternally, she didn't stick around to savor you don't really savor fruit, I guess, but to taste the fruits of her illuminating her insight. All right, so we're stalled at P, and that's good. It kind of tells us we're on the right track with the pattern I'm using, but I'd like to see a more pronounced stall, maybe for another day or two, or a sharper pullback. If this were to pull back, that'd be quite a pullback, but if it were to swoon to 215, you'd have to be crazy not to buy there. Your stop loss would be huge. Let's see. You'd be getting in at 215, whatever it is. Stop loss 133. So we obviously need to come up with another strategy for getting long with the mechanical signal that would come on a swoon to the green line. But looks good, but I can't give you any forecast about a minimum absolutely going to get to secondary pivot because it has yet to pass through the P midpoint. All right, we have from Guido, please take a look at the agricultural ETF DBA. What DBA? Did I actually type that wrong? Guess I did. Not doing too well. This was Matt's curse in playing out. It stalled almost precisely at P2 and eventually fell to below the point C of the pattern. Well, it looks like it's just in not really a head and shoulders, but it is in a pattern that has kind of the same distribution inputs as a head and shoulder, which means it's hard to be bullish on this stock, this ETF. It wants to come lower, and it has to get down to here before it finds a significant low for traction. BT, I reread maybe BRTI wrong. All right, I'll get to that. Commodity Fund GSG, is that another ETF? Commodity indexed something or other. Same thing, we're in, if not a head and shoulders, something which has distribution characteristics akin to a head and shoulders. So it's hard to be bullish. And when this thing drops over the edge, there's no bottom. But strictly speaking, we're not trading or paying much attention to that big pattern. We'd really have to focus on this lesser pattern. All right, so it was a mechanical short at the green line, and it's still slightly in the red, but I'd say we're going to come down at least to P. Depending on how it tests there, it'll either break it or not, but if it breaks it decisively, you'll be looking at 19.59. Request from Mike for BTRI, and maybe that's the one that I had, let's see, BTRI. Blackridge Technology International. Well, I don't usually trouble myself to look for this symbol, but Blackridge Technology. Well, I can't waste any more time on that. We already looked at ARKK, Kathy. Another question from an outsider here by email was from Marvin. Charge point is an American electrical vehicle infrastructure company based in Campbell, California. Huh. They must be in a business. I kept on exhorting my son to get into that business, to installing, well, the idea was to install chargers in the homes because there's not enough people out there to do the work. And you just needed to perfect it in a couple local markets and then kind of franchise it. So I'm wondering if that's what ChargePort does. Well, I'm going to have to stick with, having mentioned my son, I'll put in a plug for him. If you're buying or selling a Toyota Supra, he's the guy. All right. He knows where they are, how much to pay, and so on and so forth. Usually his customers tend to be young collectors, and I guess that's not hard to figure out since the Supra, its popularity began with the Fast and Furious movies. All right, CHPT, it looks good. And based on the way this thing has handled the midpoint pivot between yesterday and today, there's no doubt in my mind that it's going at least to 1692. Careful up there because it's going to stall if it doesn't. Maybe you could extend the pattern like this with the lower A and put the target up there maxed out at 18.63, but it will be maxed out there. And if you're trading this, if you own this stock long term, you need to get ready, reef the sails, as they say, partially at 1692, but 1862 or whatever it was will be the end of the line for this before it goes into a lengthy consolidation. All right, let's see, Chewy from the email question is an American online retailer of pet food and other pet-related products based in Dania Beach, Florida. All right, so let's take a look at Chewy. I've seen their ads, and I guess it seems like an interesting way to sell a dog food because nobody else has used the concept of Chewy to sell it. And they're obviously appealing to our human brains and appetites with the word chewy, but that's certainly worked out really well in the pet industry, is selling pet foods that sound kind of appetizing to us humans. Nobody who's tasted it, though, has really good things to say about it. All right, so we're down here. And a little bit of a stall at P, so we're going to get a corresponding stall at exactly 47.95, but that's where it's going. Not much of a stall, maybe, because you don't have something consolidating for 3 weeks just to go a measly, 3.5 points higher. So I think, it looks like a reasonably good bet to blow through those peaks right there. And it's already started. It looks like this high, let's see, this high is 45.70. And that high is 45.63. So believe it or not, we've overshot that high. It's bullishly impulsive. So we could actually trade this leg here. I don't know, that's not much of a C. Anyway, this is the way it looks to me, projecting 52.85, not bad. Jane Centene Corp, CNC, is also an emailed in question. And I appreciate your making the email in questions count, Dave. All right, so Centene is a publicly traded managed care company based in St. Louis, Missouri, serves as an intermediary for government-sponsored and privately insured health programs. Huh. Okay. I think I knew someone in Colorado who used to do that. All right, so we've got a little pattern here that looks like it may have blown off to its D target. Yeah, so it's pulling back, but the blow off was impulsive itself. You created a new impulse leg, which is a good sign that the uptrend will continue. So this is a nice impulse leg here, a very strong one. So this stock will definitely be a buy on a pullback, and of course that's a trick that takes a little more. I can tell you how to trade when it gets to some of my places here, but I can't tell you how to trade this. All I can tell you is that I like this pullback as a corrective move. For ARC, it looks like C should be 2 bars to the right. Why did you choose the one on the 13th? I don't know, Mike. Well, I guess you're not here. Well, no, you must be to have seen that. Let me think. ARC. I hate to come back to any stock, really. I don't know. I mean, I never make mistakes, right? All right. Arvin. So we already looked at Black Ridge Technology International, right? Over-the-counter market. I guess the questioner's name is Arvin. All right. So, and BRTI is still not a symbol that I can call up. So I'm not going to even pay attention if I see that again. All right. Please comment on Yamana Gold, AUY. One of the better mining companies out there, having its problems, obviously. I mean, it's struggling. It struggled to bottom there where it should have at 437, and but unfortunately, the struggle so far has not given us an impulse leg going in the opposite direction. So the fledgling end of the bear market and Yamana is not officially at an end here. It would certainly help. It would have helped if we could have popped from this high just slightly higher. That would have gotten past internal and external peak, but it didn't do that. It chickened out. So it's just get out of my face. So it's just like who knows. All right. But yeah, Yamana will be a stock you want to own if it finally starts to move. Mustafa asked for DIA. All right. So that's what they call the ETF for the Dow now. DIA, well, in my heyday, that was the symbol for a driller called Diamond Shamrock. Well, pretty wacky. It got quite a move off a bit below that D target low. So what's it doing now? It's bearishly impulsive. Well, doing nothing. I mean, all the rally so far hasn't gotten past a single external peak. If we blow this up a little bit here, let's see what we got. All right, so where we really want to be, all right, we've already looked at that. All right, so I don't know. This is the pattern I would tend to trade. Well, no, I'll do the obvious one. All right, so the P2, the rally off the secondary pivot, the pink line, gives this thing a chance of exhibiting the characteristics of Matt's curse, meaning the rally is destined, well, not quite destined, but it could get above the C high there, the pattern. But strictly speaking, and this is the trade I would emphasize to you, it's a mechanical short at 320.80 with the stop at 333 up there just above C. And all I can tell you is track this one. Well, no, I'm not gonna discard Matt's curse here, especially in an instance where it's as important and insightful as this one here. Meaning, you know, if this bear rally gets us up to here, we're all in big trouble. I mean, true believers, that is. Another web-based question. Right now, my two main interests are gold, final bottom, and Bitcoin is the bottom in, or is it headed for 12? There's no bottom in Bitcoin. It's fundamentally worthless, and that's where it's going. I'm not going to say worthless. I'm going to say Bitcoin probably has a value of $3 or $4, but that's it. And that comes from a discussion I had with 𝗧𝗙 one of my friends who he just has answers. He's a software developer, but his father was it's in his genes. His father was a blackjack player and a good one and a mathematician. So Craig and I asked him that question that nobody else answers, Michael Saylor or Tudor Jones or any of those guys, like why should Bitcoin be worth anything? And Craig said, because it has the ability to record a transaction in a secure form, which it certainly does. It can't do it as efficiently as a credit card or, you know, other mediums of exchange that we use, but it does have that value of recording a transaction. I don't concede that scarcity should give it any value at all. And that's the one thing that's always adduced, you know, Satoshi and his 21 million Bitcoins, just because there are 21 million of them, I think that may have been a hook that captured a lot of interest, but to me, it didn't create value. It just created, well, a bit like the Christmas, when we had Christmas parties when I worked on the exchange, they would play sort of, yeah, what do traders do? What kind of party games do they play? Not pin the tail on the donkey, and there was no apple dunking or anything, but there was a game where everybody would start out with X number of green chips or red chips or blue chips or yellow. And of course, since they were all just given out and assigned, much the way Satoshi created Bitcoin from nothing, everybody got the reds, greens, blues, and yellows, and we were told to simply trade them up, which we did. And by the end of the game, you know, three players would be bankrupt, they'd be broke, they'd have nothing, and one player would have amassed all of the red, all the different colored chips. But Bitcoin's the same thing. It is. I challenge anybody to tell me in what fundamental way Bitcoin is different from the party game that I just described from my stock exchange days. All right, so I guess that's sort of a roundabout way of answering your question, but no, I don't think the bottom's in. Let's take a look at the chart because I did put out there, hang on, let me show it to you, just so you don't think I'm spoofing you. Trades. All right, so in Bitcoin, always at the bottom of my list, I said it was trading at 21,000 and change, and I thought it should have gotten down to 17,903, and it rallied from above that. Normally, I think that's bullish if it couldn't achieve a D downside target, but in this case, I say I would infer this is more bullish than a reversal from the target itself, but not this time. I would say they simply, buyers jumped the gun on a 17,000 downside target that was too obvious. So all we're in right now in Bitcoin then is it's just a front run rally. You know, it's like everybody's thinking, how close do we allow it to get to this obvious? It's no longer a Rick's Picks target. It's an eminent domain at this point. And they all started buying up here. To me, that's not a great reason for a rally. That's why this rally ain't going so far. How far is it going? Well, I had that one right so far. I said that just because we were getting a front run rally, that doesn't mean a real rally could not begin with the brazen front running as occurred here. But it does suggest that a lot of people are trapped in Bitcoin now. So you got to think of the rallies the way the players are thinking. God, just give me another $2,000 or $3,000 here, and I'll get out, and I'll never do it again. So I said that there'd be increasing pressure as we got up toward round number 25,000. And in order to trade these things, I often make the point, you have to think like an idiot to trade successfully. And in this case, you got to be thinking they're all focused on 25,000 as that's what they're praying for. All right, just give me 25,000. They're all sort of breaking the increments here into $5,000 increments, breaking the increments into increments. Good. It's like savoring fruit. Maybe you can savor fruit. I don't know. All right, so we'll see. 25,000. You got to think that there's round number resistance at each round number, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, because that's how all the people who are trapped in Bitcoin think about it. Supposedly 70% of people who own some form of crypto got in since it's either within the last year or in calendar year 2022. But either way you slice it, I mean, there's a lot of supply up here. There just is. And it came down to such scary levels that the supply becomes somewhat enthused, meaning a little bit panicky about a little bit desperate to get out. So you're going to have desperation selling all the way up. And that's not to say that the sleazeballs who run the show can't be as sleazily opportunistic as the ones who make markets in all the other vehicles. And in other words, when they see that there's just a little bit of an interval here where maybe the sellers backed away for reasons of news, for reasons of time of day or time of week or whatever, yeah, they'll squeeze this thing. You know, there's even a lot of, right now, the opportunism in Bitcoin. Bitcoin has become, you know, it's gone from kind of leading the market in terms of market craziness to just being a go along, you know, going along chicken shit. And so Bitcoin is only going to move when it sees the broad averages are moving too. It's never going to be a market leader again. It just doesn't have that confidence in it any longer. And for all I know, for all we know, it never will again. Have I said enough about Bitcoin? All right. What was the other question? Gold. I did an interview with Jim Goddard just before this presentation, and I'm definitely more and more on with the theme that gold is bottoming here. I was looking for a bottom at 1665. We've had a rally from 1678 today, I think it was. Let's see, yeah, 1678. So far, not a bad rally. It's 25 bucks, but I'm not quite sure yet that this is it. If we relapse, I would certainly be a buyer, back up the truck buyer at 1665. But you know, to get a handle on, well, is this it? Are we starting something new and different and interesting? The move in gold is a little lunatic-y, and we don't even trust like stable, solid, good players in on the rallies in gold. Gold is such a total crock, really, in terms of how it's manipulated. I mean, it's the only thing in the same league maybe is Beyond Meat. All right, so, and I should have mentioned this yesterday. I was so sort of stuck on 1665. that I put this up when I was looking for actual trades, and I saw, I saw a bounce from 1682. Let me say something else about that. This pattern is not exactly eminent domain. It's not like everybody sees ABCD here, and yet this clearly got front run. Not terribly, because the first buy down at 1682, down at the line, it actually had a small payoff. It rallied to 1691. But you can see that it had to stop out everybody a few times at that line. So the line was a known quantity then, meaning it means the drawers, imbeciles, village idiots, riffraff, hoi polloi, they were all in, not all, but there were enough of them in on this pattern that it tells us we've got to adjust a little bit in terms of what we consider gnarly, gnarly enough to get down here and put a bid with the tight stop loss down there instead of going through the work of a reverse pattern trade or whatever. All right, so this is a wicked bit of short squeeze, but if it relapses, look for 1665. If you're in already, you should set a loosey-goosey stop loss, maybe use an impulsive stop on a 3-minute chart, meaning if it takes out that low and it gets from here to here without an upward correction, stop yourself out beneath that low right there. Well, you could go a little subtler than that. You could use an impulsive stop beneath that low, but again, same principle, and that is if you have an impulse leg to the downside, and I'm meaning a true impulse leg, once it gets past this low, it has to get past that one too without an upward BC correction on this 3-minute chart. All right, and correction, I mean sort of visually obvious, evident, and all that. So a good decisive impulse leg below that low, that's where you should put your stop loss right now. But it's your choice. If you were in here no one got the bottom, but I think someone in the chat room said they bought at 1688, 10 bucks off the bottom. So you got a little profit to protect there, and certainly you got in a good place. But beware of that possible backsliding here. Let's see, for reverse patterns, this isn't the place to discuss that here, Mike, at all. This is a request session. Outside question from maybe another Rick for Gold Royalty Corp, GROY, Focus Precious Metals Royalty Company. All right. Let's back up a little bit. Well, I mean, could do work. It's this, the first impulse leg worked, but it was shot here, A, B, C, D, that's it. We pulled back for a bigger one, but without that high having gotten past any externals. So this whole thing is ersatz. It's all fake. Not that we can't get faked out with that assumption or sticking hard fast to it. All right, maybe we can diddle Groy and TradeStation to letting me put the B high there. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I don't know. I mean, it's not giving us, well, it did give us a mechanical buy here, a red line buy, which, by the way, you could have done it in mini Dow today, which I did not do. That's why I remember the trade so well. Anyway, I'd watch out at 277, even though this looks like a bit much of a correction to go only marginally higher, but it could still be shorted using a reverse pattern if it touches 277, because that's not a bad looking target. All right, just to show you in YM the trade that I just mentioned, it was this one here. It was ordinarily, I don't do mechanical buys at the red line. It's just somewhat riskier. But in this case, I felt like things were just screwing around so much today that any downtrend was never going to get serious. And so, you know, I was talking with my partner about buying there, and we just kind of missed the trade. It did take off pretty radically, but the stop loss was down here, and that represents, if you're in here and you want to get out at the D target, this stop loss at I think it was 3126 was the let's see, 31,320. That's simply a third of the differential between where you're getting in and where you hope to get out up there. Certainly you would be taking profits there. Holder of $110,000 of Bitcoin, 110K Bitcoin. I don't know what that means. SAAS also. SAAS. That doesn't compute, sorry. Mister, we already did that. I don't know why I'm getting all these. Oh, I know, because this rotten Citrix application, it blips you to the top of the list here. SAAS, am I doing something wrong? No, I'm not. You're gonna have to do better than that symbol. 𝗥𝗲𝗾 Mining, HL. All right. Let's see, we're impulsive from here. I'm gonna take the one off. And it definitely leaves you with a pretty gnarly pattern, which happens to have gone nowhere. It's still a buy, you know. This move still feels very corrective to me. It's not like it's going to slide back down to here. So you need to think of 𝗥𝗲. Excuse me. You need to think of ways to be buying it. Technically, it triggered a buy signal there, but it's a conventional buy signal, which we almost never use. Based in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. All right. I don't know. I mean, it's a buy, but I don't see that happening right here. Gonna have to wait for it to go lower, maybe trip another signal with the green line and the new green line, and then work your entry from that signal. There's one other way to do it. I'll just mention it without getting too deeply into the proprietary details. You'd use a reverse pattern and simply buy at D, tight stop loss. But you have to be prepared for this thing not getting all the way down to D before it turns around. But I would definitely be a buyer there with a tight stop. That looks like good risk reward to me. Request from Mukesh. How can you know at least 65% successfully that the sector stock or market NASDAQ could bottom and gradually buy in? I don't know. Beats me. Right. How can you know at least 65% successfully that the sector stock or market have bottomed and gradually buy in? I don't know. I mean, how can you know? Not sure how to respond to that question. I mean, you know, anybody who's been with the Rick's Picks for a while will know that when I put the word "know" in quotes, meaning I just know this is going to happen, I'm right maybe 96% of the time. So I guess you could say I know, but it's somewhat instinctual. If you don't want to do it instinctually, then just do it kind of the old-fashioned way, which is it comes from the simple fact that virtually every bull market in history, there are no exceptions to this. Every bull market in history started with a single tick uptick from the low of the bear market. There are no exceptions to that. And I can predict that over the next 10,000 years, if the market still exists, that there'll be no exceptions. Virtually every bull market that we'll see, that humanity will see for the next 1,000 years, will start with one penny uptick off the bear market low. So if that low corresponds to something that you've got on your radar, like a P or P pivot or a downside D target, then you got a good reason to start putting a camouflage 1 minute chart up there and saying, I'm going to trade the first uptrending ABC that comes from that low. So in that way, you can be the first on board. You can be the first person to do a trade in the new bull market, again, because of the simple fact that no. All right, let me put it in a somewhat different perspective. I've said you can trade it, but you're no, I lost my train of thought there. But an idea you should take with you here is that you'll never. You have a chance of getting in at the absolute bottom of a bear market simply by being on the 1 minute chart and looking for the turn. No significant trend change or even an insignificant trend change can occur without telling you on the 1 minute chart that it's happening. You might not get the high tick unless it's at your D target or P midpoint, but you get near the target and you go on a 1 minute chart and you see an impulse leg coming downward, a little ABCD pattern. Well, you know, a significant downtrend can never get going without generating an impulse leg on the 1 minute chart. So if you follow the 1 minute chart there, Mukesh, and you relate your 1 minute chart to more important hidden pivot targets, either upside or downside, you're never going to miss the turn. And you're going to be pretty sure that even though you may not be sure that you're catching the absolute high of a bull market or the low of a bear market, unless you're perhaps at a very significant, very long-term D target. But for sure, you're capturing you can be pretty confident that you're capturing a turn, if not the big turn. And I don't think I've ever put that out there in quite that way, but it's a good information. I mean, it's something that I use that you could use. It's not particularly complicated. Southern Copper request from. All right. So the nice, nobody else sees it, ABC pattern that we would use is right here. Nobody on planet Earth was using that. And all right, it's the same as 𝗥𝗲𝗾, you know, there's no way to trade it right now that more or less eliminates risk. Request for Marco, from Marco for Newmont. All right, Newmont, I guess, suffers in particular because it's an institutional favorite, and to say that gold has not yet caught the fancy of institutional buyers, boy, that would be an understatement. They'll all claim that they were in at the bottom when we finally get a bottom, but of course, no portfolio managers are exactly talking up gold right now. All right, so well, I don't know why this thing didn't stop. This is not a good sign because there's nothing wrong with this pattern. The fact that it gapped through the red line told you when it was at 56.55 that it was definitely going to $3.30 down to this D target. Absolutely, that was going to happen. But this is a little bit of overkill that I can't quite. I'm not going to try to explain that, but it's not exactly, well, I mean, it's not even like it was testing those lows there. That was already done. So I can only infer that this is not a happy sign here. Analyze AT&T. That was some gap we had here today, isn't it? 21 down to 18 and change. I would have been a buyer right there. And I'm not, you have to come to the Wednesday sessions to find out where we would have gotten in and how, but you know, this thing turned right where you might think it would. All right, so not sure. We need a bigger pattern to get a target for when this thing relapses. And that's where I would look. 1789, I think, is where it's going to bottom. It's only $1 below where we are now, but that's where you should look to do your buying. Request for oil. Oil today has been repelled. The rally has been turned back by the P midpoint of this reverse pattern here. It was absolutely a buy. Well, this is the, oh, all right, this is the September contract. My partner and I discussed this one today, and he said, did I miss the trade? Because I had a 92 and change green line in the, well, I'll show you. In the, well, this pattern, I needed it to come, well, that's not the correct pattern. So let me go back to the September. All right, so this was a really good mechanical buy, 94.47. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'd probably be taking profits, not shooting for, in this case, not even the fence, but just P, because we've got a pretty mean downtrend going. It's going up against this impulsive on the reverse pattern leg, so that's why it was worth playing here at all. And it didn't quite hit the green line, by the way, just to screw me. It came down to within 12 cents of it. Yeah, the low was 94.59. And I typically want to stick with the rule if I'm going to stick with it. And the rule here would have been wait till it touches the green line before you do the trade. So even if I'd had my monitor set up to do that one, I might have missed it. A TLT 20+ year treasury. Question from Jeff. And it still looks good. You know, it took a lot of consolidating to get this CD leg launched, but the target is 118.93. By the time it gets up there, it's definitely going to want to noodle around with those highs. And I, of course, being ever the deflationist, think there's a good chance that T-bonds will push through that resistance. And you, for purposes of getting long this, you could do worse than shorting puts in TLT for playing treasuries themselves. If you were bullish on T-bond futures, you could have shorted puts in this, because this was definitely, it was a mechanical buy here and here, even though I wasn't feeling too enthused about the mechanical buy there. Someone asked about it in the chat room. Let's see, TLT finish for rest of this year. Well, I have Dave put the question present tense, TLT finish for rest of this year. I don't know. That sounds like accented English there, but I'm not quite sure what the question is. S&P 500, we've done that already. I think we did. We covered the, well, you know what? Actually, I didn't. Let me give you the corresponding targets to, let me get rid of extra lines here. The corresponding targets, let's see here. All right, so, the first target is 4033. And I'm trying to remember, I think that comes off a straight ABCD pattern. The next highest target comes off this reverse pattern. It's a little bit wifty gnarly crazy because of the A that I've used. This is a very unconventional AB, but you're just sort of taking in the big picture, the sweep of it, and that gives you, when this one lost out already. Well, no, I'm sorry, you know, that's the source of the 4033. Let me show it to you. All right, so let me crunch this a little bit so that, all right. So the targets that I'm using for the S&P 500, or this futures copy of it, would be, oh, I'm sorry, it's 4133, I guess. Or was it? No, it was 4033. Let me check it out again. Yeah, 4033. And I guess that is from this pattern here, A, B, C, D, maybe with the one-off A down there. And the second highest target is this, and the 4256, if this thing really breaks loose into the ozone. So I think it's going to get to 4033, but let's take a look at why I think that, if I can remember. Just because, you know, a lot of the smaller, the single stocks we looked at, they're all going to somewhat higher targets. I don't know. Well, anyway, 4033 is my minimum target. If it gets past that in a big way, I'd be looking at 4116, and that's enough for now. SOXS, semiconductor bear 3X. Boy, is that sucker bait. Making money on this, guys? Thank you, TradeStation. Let's try it again. You can, I don't know about back up the truck, because again, every pattern we look at anymore, we have to relegate it to droolardom. They're all seeing the same thing, and this one certainly isn't obscure. On the other hand, it's clear enough and it's impulsive enough with this B exceeding the external low there that it's got to work. It's got to work somewhat. And you know, the most typical way for these things to work when all the droolers see them is that it gives you your initial bounce from very close, a little bit of a rally, breaks down through it, then rallies a little, and it may diddle with your low beneath that. That's how this is going to play out. I mean, that is your sign that the village idiots are all in on your pattern. So, you know, we are maybe 2 or 3 years ahead of them on some of the stuff we're doing, or 5 years, one hopes. But anyway, yeah, it will come down. Nobody's front running this target, believe me. So it will come down to 4074 before it turns around. All right. Grateful for a refresher. We looked at TLT, so I'm not going to do bonds. DE. All right, this is John Deere, the tractor maker. Actually, I'd be curious to know how this thing did relative to the lock patterns coming down, patterns for which there's no alternative B's and C's. Well, not bad. This thing, it only took it the better part of a month to find a bottom there. And all right, so we have little to gain by going up for that A, but let's see what that looks like. Well, you could use either pattern really, but you can't, because they're both kind of done with now. So we're on to new vistas, which means The conventional ABCD has already exceeded its D target ABCD. So for the next biggest bullish pattern, we really need to go to here, and I'm being kind of chintzy using that A instead of the marquee A. We can use marquee A's in reverse patterns. And I'm not going to explain why. Ask me in the Wednesday session and I'll explain why. But all right, so, well, I don't know. This gave us one good trade there, mechanical buy at the green line, nothing else since. And if we were to put it down here, this is my least ambitious target. And I think it'll get there based on Monday's gap up, Tuesday's gap up through the red line. But if we're going whole hog here and saying, all right, so this pattern may be validated within the next few days. We've had a pretty precise stall at P, and it is at P because this thing here, the structural high that the droolers were focused on, is not even interfering with the rally here. So it's really P that's acting on this thing. So I think this pattern is valid, and we'll have our answer as to whether this thing can go another 30 points to the D target when we see how this thing finally escapes the pull of gravity at the red line. And let's see if Caterpillar is the same way. All right, so same pattern, and I'll use the big one that I did for deer. Little piece of. All right, so Caterpillar is not as evolved as deer, and that's not a good sign. I don't take it as a good sign for deer. I take it as a bad sign for both of them. I mean, I don't take deer's bullishness as the good sign. I think I would weight the negative here reflected by Caterpillar's heaviness. So between the two of them, we'll just have to watch them both. As Rick covered, you've got three symbols up there. So T-Mobile, all big, well, this is all bull up here. All of this didn't even get past that external, not the marquee high there, but they all failed. And so I think bulls are going to pay heavily for that failure. They've already paid a price, but I think we're going to keep coming down. Tradable pattern is here. Minimum 131. Well, there's a question here. Do you use that as A or that? I'm taking this as one off relative to that high. So yeah, you can definitely use this pattern to trade, except David Isham would say, no, use your B, shouldn't it be there? And it should. All right. I'll beat you to it, Dave. All right, so yeah, you got a buy coming up at 130.97. You can bid 3 pennies, 4 pennies above that with a really tight stop loss. Clorox, still not impulsive, it's still corrective. So let's see, what's a good obscure ABCD uptrending pattern? Oh, we don't have perfect obscurity, but this will do. I don't know, this stock's a little nutty, but this is the pattern I would use until such time as it breaks the C low 145.30. I've rarely gotten requests for Schwab, but here's one. Well, this spike gives the pattern itself some gnarliness, so I'll use here. This is gnarly enough that all of your level trades, your HP level trades, should have worked. Let's see if that's the case. Oh no, I'm sorry. We got to come down here. All right, so it's not so gnarly, not as gnarly anymore, but you got a couple red line winners. I don't know that I'd buy the green line here. I'd need a little more of an impulse leg to mechanically buy the green line. Even though it's worked a couple times at the red line, this one may wind up being distribution, meaning we're coming down here again. All right. And RIVN, I think we're getting to the tail end of our session here. And I somewhat like this because CD is that just enormous stretch. Well, on a 5-minute chart, check this out. And if this works, it'll be in a category of my absolute favorite trade. Let me get rid of this first. But I talk about ABC patterns that the droolers don't see. And this will be one of them. Look at it. All right, so we'll come down to the 10-minute and we'll go back to the 5th, which is where that occurred. We don't quite have an ABC here. Well, we do. I could get a little more separation, but I know it's here just looking at this chart. So this is about as gnarly as they get. Huh. Well, it delivered a couple good trades, but it didn't deliver a perfect D target. So why, I don't know. And I can't get one by stretching down here either. That just hangs me up. It did give me a mechanical buy here. This is a crazy pattern. I'm really shocked that this didn't work with the subtlety, the hiddenness of the BC. All right, so let's get back to your question, which is what do I think about this? All right, so we're past the D target of that thing. All right, all right. So rather than look at big stuff, we'll look at something on the right-hand side that's definitely working. Well, I don't know. I would buy a pullback to 32.50 mechanically. Stop loss there. You're shooting for 35.25. And finally, this will be the last one. Dog ready to die again. Delta Airlines, DAL. Waiting for it to deliver more price bars here. I mean, today, I hope. There we go. All right, it's slightly impulsive to the extent that the last couple of days this week, we've taken out that external right there. So it gives you a reason for trading bullishly. So here's how I would do that. Well, I'm not going to get quite as deep into proprietary details as that, but this downtrend, the gap down today, is just kind of Mau Frightwig stuff. I read it as a correction. I don't think going to make new lows. So at some point along this slide, but above that low right there, this thing will become a buy. So that's it. We've had a good hour plus 20 minutes today, and a good session. I hope you guys were come away with something you can use. Plenty of stocks were covered, and I guess I will see you all. This will be the 3rd Thursday of August. That's August 18th. So with that, I'm going to bid you a very pleasant goodbye and happy trading.